Okay, so the first step in drawing your product is figuring out the proportions. So I'm going to draw straight lines down the widest edge of my product, and then I'm going to measure the width compared to the height. This is about 1 to a little over 2 3/4 ratio. So I'm going to write that down, and then I can draw whatever size line I want on my drawing paper because I'm using that line to determine the height. So there's 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to draw straight lines, straight vertical lines to connect those two horizontal lines, and that is the same ratio as the original image. But I feel like it's too close to the edge, to the top edge, so I'm going to move that vertical line down, and then I'll measure how much I moved it and move the bottom the same amount. And that way it keeps my proportions, and I don't have to erase as much. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw diagonal lines through the corners, and these are going to really just be guidelines to show me where center is and to help me divide the plane further later so that I can make accurate proportionate lines on my paper as well. So these are important. You can use a ruler for this if you choose. I drew these lines and then I drew them a couple times because I wasn't really satisfied with them. It is your choice. There's my center line. So I'm just double checking that it is accurate. Both sides are equal. Now I'm going to start marking where some guidelines should go. So this is going to be the line to end to where the bristles start. And when I measured it, it was about a third of that top half, which is an easy ratio. So I drew it on my paper. Now I'm going to draw a line where the bottom of the metal part is, which is called a ferrule. And it's not quite as far away. So I'm using the diagonals to kind of help with that visualization. And now I'm going to draw guidelines for the size of the handle. So I drew straight vertical lines and I'm measuring that ratio. And it seems like they are about a third, but they're in the center. So I'm going to divide my horizontal plane into thirds. I just kind of guessed and then I measured to make sure, and then I had to redraw that line and I measured to make sure that looked good. So I'm going to draw those lines vertically up and down. And then I know that my handle belongs in the center there. And I can kind of center the bottom part because it doesn't fill that whole rectangle. It kind of flutes out and then it fills the space to where the metal part begins. And I drew this line trying to mimic the other line, and I didn't do a very good job. So I turned it around and I redrew it. Sometimes it's easier to draw the same line if you turn it upside down so that you can get them symmetrical on both sides. Here I am measuring my hole in the bottom of my handle. All of the lines on this brush are curved because it is a thicker brush, so the lines curve around it. So here I am curving all of those guidelines. I'm darkening lines that I need. The bristles do extend out a little past the edge of the rectangle, so I drew those in with a small slant. And now I am drawing in some details. So these are the lines in the ferrule, the crimps in the metal. And I can draw these darker because I know that this is accurate because I've used all my grid lines. And then here's the bottom crimp in that metal piece. And then I drew a few little shadow lines and I made my hole three-dimensional, and then I drew the lines noting the value change in the bristles. Now I'm going to extend my guidelines and draw this same brush from the side. And I can use the same guidelines I already have. I kind of guessed at the width of this brush. I don't have that information from the image, but I can assume kind of how wide it is. And I extended the guidelines for the metal piece. And I know that the handle curves in, and then the metal piece curves around the paintbrush again, so it's not quite a straight line, but I know where they're at. And here are the bristles, and here's some of the details with that ferrule, some of those lines and some of those crimps in that metal. And then I darken the lines that I know I'm keeping. So I'm keeping all of my guidelines, but I'm darkening the lines of the actual product